Hello, my name is Laura Penrose. I work in the Student Advice and Support Service on campus. This presentation is to give you an insight into how student finance works for placements and study abroad. Our contact details are there on the slide. You're very welcome to get in touch if you would like some one-to-one advice about the specifics of your own situation or your plans for your study abroad or placements. This information is aimed at students who are planning to head out on placement next autumn, October 2021, or perhaps slightly before if you've got a placement that starts early. So the tuition fees that the university will be charging for next year are detailed in this table here. Depends on your placement type as to how much you pay. If you're a UK EU student, if you're an international student, the tuition fee is set at £3,600 regardless of the type of year that you're doing. So if you're doing an industrial placement out in the workplace, tuition fees will be charged at £1,850. For study abroad, it's £1,385. If you're doing a mixture in your year, a split year with 6 months placement and 6 months study abroad, the tuition fee will be £1,385. The rest of the presentation really looks at how UK student finance works, the maintenance loans and funding that you can get from the government. And in the main, we'll be looking at the figures for students based in England. The other UK administrations, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, do have slightly different funding rates, and they haven't yet released their figures for the 21-22 academic year. We will be able to access that information for you, or at least give you an idea of what the figures are for this year, with the expected increase for next year, probably around about 3% if inflation continues as it has been. If you want to come and talk to us about that, we're more than happy to advise if you're from one of the other administrations, or indeed if you're an international student. So come and speak to us, or give us a call. We can do a phone appointment or an MS Teams appointment, as we're working remotely right now. So just first of all, it's really helpful to establish what kind of placement so that you understand how your funding fits. There are different kinds of funding depending on the kind of placement. So this here is particularly looking at work placements, not study abroad. I've got a slide on that later. So 3 different kinds of placement really. A paid placement out in industry. That would also include if you are undertaking your own business activity under the year in enterprise arrangements that the university offers to students. If you're doing an unpaid placement, but that's also in an industrial setting or a commercial setting, and not one of the exceptions, which is the ones listed below. So student finance have a category of specific types of placement that they call Type B. And as you can see, these are perhaps in social service or healthcare settings where there's considered perhaps be an element of social good in what you're doing. So the wide range of health activities there, anything that's basically a government health activity would be covered, and those students will get more student finance than the ones who are out on a year in industry. And the same goes for local authorities carrying out duties in relation to health, welfare, caring for children and young people, and similarly charities and voluntary organisations doing similar activities also fall into this category. If you work in the prison or probation sector or aftercare services, if you're undertaking unpaid research in a UK or overseas institution, usually institution is taken to mean a higher education institution. If you are an unpaid researcher on placement in the House of Commons, again, you get a concession in terms of how much student finance you get. You do rather better than if you're just on a year out in industry. So the standard funding for anyone who's not in one of those exceptional Type B categories is, as I've said, you can have a tuition fee loan which will cover whatever the tuition fee is that you're being charged, so whether it's 1,385 for a mixed year or 1,850 for a full-on placement year. The maintenance loan figures for the year are set out there, so if you're living at your parents' home and just commuting daily into work from a local place near your family home, £2,155. If you are on placement in London, £4,035 for the year. And elsewhere, so not London, not parental home, say for example if you're staying in Loughborough or anywhere else around the UK that isn't one of the previous ones, then you get £2,874. So for most people, the rate of student loan for a working placement year would be much less than you get in a normal study year. One question that often crops up here is that students whose families live in London and they might be doing a placement close to their family home, unfortunately student finance only pay you the minimum rate, the 2155 for your family home, not the London rate. These loans are not income assessed, so if you're normally somebody who gets a higher rate of loan because your family are from have a lower income, unfortunately that doesn't apply in these cases. They're just flat rates for the year. In addition, just to let you know that the Loughborough Scholarship Programme bursaries aren't payable for placement years. There is an alternative type of bursary which I'll cover later on. If you're in one of the unpaid placements, the specific services, or type B as they're called, so the healthcare, probation service, all those kind of things that I listed earlier, and these particularly relevant perhaps for our students who are doing some of the psychology courses or the more health orientated courses. So again, you get a tuition fee loan from student finance to cover the fees that you're being charged. But your funding, your maintenance loan, is funded as if you're in a year of study. So it would include the higher rate of student loan, and the means testing still applies. So if you come from a low income background, you would get a higher rate of student loan if you're normally entitled to that. One thing to say here is don't forget it's important that you apply for your placement year funding. There's always a few students who slip through the net having not applied for, at least for their tuition fee for the year. They think can manage without student finance, which should be fine, but then they find that their tuition fee hasn't been covered because they didn't request a tuition fee loan. So do remember to do that. Here's the special Loughborough bursary for unpaid placements I mentioned in a slide or two previously. For the 21-22 scheme, we're still waiting confirmation of the exact details. I can tell you how it's worked in previous years though, and hopefully it will continue for when your cohort go out. So the bursary's been up to a value of about £5,000 for the year, and it's available to help you with your day-to-day living costs, travel, whatever you need it for whilst you're out on placement. And this is on top of your student loan if you borrow it. You have to be from a low-income household to receive it, and in previous years the threshold has been £25,000 or below. And you have to be on an unpaid placement in 2021-22. Watch out for details coming through. You're normally expected to express an interest in the bursary by round about March time, but placement coordinators will let you know when the details are available and you can then follow up. If you're a student going out on study abroad, your tuition fee, as I said earlier, will be set at £1,385, and you can borrow the tuition fee loan to cover that. Remember to apply. And the maintenance loans are significantly more generous. They are paid as if you are in a year of study, so again, they're means tested. It depends on how much household income you have. But as you can see there, they're several £1,000s higher than they would be if you were studying in Loughborough, in recognition of the fact that you may have extra costs, or you may be in a country where the cost of living is higher. The Loughborough Scholarship Programme bursaries are not available for study abroad. There are a very limited number of bursaries that are available through the exchange team. And again, if you're somebody who might qualify for that, you can either come and ask us or get hold of the exchange programme team to tell you about what's available. The other thing that you may get if you're studying abroad is something called a travel grant, and that's done through Student Finance England. We'll be happy to talk that through with you if it's something you can get. You do have to be somebody on a lower income in order to get the travel grant through Student Finance England. That's means tested. Other things to think about, so quick, just to flag a few things up that you might have questions about. The council tax. Your student status continues, even though you're out working on your placement year and maybe have a reasonable income, your student status continues, so you should not personally be liable to pay council tax. Obviously, whether a property accrues council tax depends on who is living there. If there's non-students in the house, there might be a bill for council tax, and you have to work out how that affects you, whether you're going to pay a share of it or not. But legally, you shouldn't receive a council tax bill in your own name. You may want to get a council tax letter from the university before you head off to your placement. Some local authorities are under the mistaken belief that because you're working and earning, you should be paying council tax. It's not generally true. If you run into problems with council tax, we can help you with that to explain your circumstances. For income tax, so for your wages, you would pay income tax normally on those, and students are treated the same as anybody else. If you're earning and you have a personal allowance generally of about £12,500 a year. It might be a little higher by the time you're actually going out on placement. It increases each year. Then you would pay tax if you're earning more than that in the year. Bear in mind that a lot of our placement years span 2 tax years, because the tax year runs April to April. Our placements might run with 6 months of that in one tax year and 6 months of it in the other, and that can sometimes be beneficial to you because you don't use up all of your allowance in any one tax year. Depends a bit what other work you've done, what other income you have. Generally, if you think you're being taxed too much or your tax is wrong, speak to your employer first and ask if their payroll department can investigate whether you're on the correct tax code. And that might generate a refund of any overpaid tax whilst you're still working, which might come in handy. If you finish your placement and think, oh, there's something funny, I seem to have paid too much tax last year, you do have, I think it's 3 or 4 years to reclaim any tax that you have overpaid. And there's a system for doing that, which again, if you need help with that, get in touch with us and we can go through it with you. A couple of sort of very broad things to think about really. One is prepare a budget, check that you can afford it. It may be the most fantastic opportunity that you could imagine, the placement that you're being offered. It's no good if you have to give up partway through because you have run out of money and you haven't thought through how it was all going to fit together, especially if you're going somewhere expensive, an expensive country, an expensive city. It's really important to work your budget out ahead. There are budgeting resources and help on our website, and if you want a one-to-one discussion about it, the advisors will help you with that too. In addition, the university has a hardship fund, very much intended at helping with emergencies or crises that crop up unexpectedly. It has to be a genuine unforeseen difficulty, not that you embarked on your placement hoping that it would all work out financially and without a real solid plan. Please do get in touch with us. We're very happy to speak to students going out on placement, or once you're out on placement even, we can do phone appointments. We're doing MS Teams appointments at the moment. So please get in touch if there's anything we can help with. Hopefully that's given you enough insight to give you some confidence and get started on your placement.